Why do we keep reaching for our phones, snacks, or the next scroll, even when we know it's not going to be helping us? That's because we have dopamine system, and that's a way in our body that we actually look for joy. So we want to find rewards with that system. And what does it actually mean when people are talking about this dopamine detox? But I want you to understand that a lot of times what we're doing that for is to reclaim our joy. And we want to take these ways to do this where we find joy without taking extreme measures or have unrealistic expectations. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Dopamine detox. Really, what is it? Why do we need to find some way to understand it better so that you can actually grow and be happier?
Today's episode is sponsored by Vitality Health RX Supplements. Whether you're an athlete, a busy professional, or just someone looking to prioritize health, Vitality Health RX has what you need. With premium ingredients and rigorous quality control, their supplements support your body's natural functions. Visit shopvrx.com and use code FEELGREAT15 for 15% off your first order. Thanks to Vitality Health RX for sponsoring this episode. Now let's dive in.
Welcome to the Feel Better, Feel Great podcast. I am your host, Dr. Andrea McSwain, with Richelle Korienek,
Hi.
our lead nurse in the clinic and our everything amazing. If you've heard me talk about her, she's been in the background for many of all of these podcasts. She's our podcast producer. And we just thought it'd be a little more fun to put her up front and so that we could chat a little bit more. So we're changing our format. But we want to definitely remind you that this is information only. It's only for educational purposes. And if you do have a medical problem, you do want to seek physician advice and support. But we're here today to help you understand health objectives and how to understand how to feel better and feel great. Dopamine detox definitely fits right into that.
I started looking through a lot of like trending stuff on like TikTok, on Facebook, Instagram, all of that, and one of the big trending words was dopamine detox. And I thought it would be interesting to talk to you about it because I thought that there are a lot of people being very very specific with the way that they are doing the detox, very much like all or nothing almost. Like they're not going and doing anything that basically gives them dopamine. So there's like no sugary foods, no phone, no TV, no music, none of that. And I thought it was kind of interesting because I was like, okay, well, I could see where like some of those things, like scrolling all the time on your phone or like things like that, could be difficult and could be something that maybe you need to fix that trend in your habit. But I think that's something that was kind of interesting and kind of difficult for me when I was like looking to do some form of this, was like no music. Like I'm not someone, I love music and I love to listen to music, and I was like, that's kind of weird, like no music. So I think that there's definitely some things we should talk about related to like what dopamine really is, and actually the correct way to do this without having a really, really hard time, because I think it is a very difficult thing to do.
Well, yeah, so dopamine detox, usually when we talk about detoxes, we're talking about getting rid of kind of the bad version, right? So we talk about like metal detoxes and parasite detoxes and, sugar detoxes, gluten detoxes, like anything that's really toxic. But dopamine is not inherently toxic. Dopamine is actually your neurotransmitter, your hormone for joy. And looking at keeping joy and then getting out the things that actually are these kind of quick fixes that really aren't about joy. They're actually kind of this scrolling, kind of going in, doing something that's not good for us, that's actually depleting. And that's where I think the difference is, because if you don't have dopamine in your life, if your dopamine levels are low, and we test for that in the Dutch test, so with VMA, which is a substrate of dopamine, or I look at progesterone deficiencies. because dopamine is definitely about progesterone. And if you're in your late 40s, like me, you maybe have a different approach to what it means to actually have joy in your life.
Right.
And so it can be generational as well, or definitely divided by decade, where a lot of the ideas of understanding the need for dopamine, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
so that's a little bit of the science behind it. One, you don't want to remove something that brings you joy inherently.
Right.
Two, we detox the stuff that isn't good for us, but we keep in the fundamental principle of things that we need. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I was seeing a lot was like people talking about how, you know, um, kind of getting like a little hit of dopamine to make yourself feel better in a time that you're not actually feeling that great. And so then you go to the pantry and you get the cupcake that's in there, or you go to the cupboard and get like some alcohol or some wine or something like that. Like they were talking a lot of about that, but I think that there were a lot of people talking more about how um you have to be off of it for 6 months, or you like these really long durations of like everything being off of. And I feel like there were definitely some creators on some of the platforms that were, kind of making it different. Like they were doing it that for a way that made sense to them, which I thought was actually very good. But I was also seeing a lot of people like get off of everything for 6-7 months, and then you'll feel good, and I was like, I feel like that is a lot. So I think that it leads to more recognizing your habits, and you've done that within the clinic as well with patients when they've had some form of like a habit that they needed to adjust or whatever. We've had that happen in the clinic, and they did really well. So I think like your smoking protocol, for example. Yeah.
Yeah. We might get into that in a little bit different time, but definitely looking at how you actually realize what you want in life, and people want joy, right? You want joy. So, okay, let's say that's your truth, because I think that it is people's truth. Also, it's truly inherent in how we function in our own bodies, right? Is to have dopamine. It fuels us. So then when we we are void of dopamine, or we're void of joy, and then we seek to fulfill that emptiness with things that are quick fixes, like, grabbing a bunch of sugar and grabbing, the phone. And it's maybe you need to rest because you're tired, but then you think, oh, I'm also maybe sad, and that's why I'm tired, because they can be connected. I'm just going to lay here and look at my phone and watch this very quick, highly stimulating, ultimately what creates a greater void. And instead of saying, I'm going to close my eyes, I'm going to relax my body, I'm going to reset my central nervous system, it's like, oh, okay, I'm just going to lay here and feel that. But, people watching TV for a long time, that's been not uncommon, right? I mean, that's how a lot of people feel their nights. They lay down and they get that kind of mindless feeling, but it's feeding them something, right? And then people also start to kind of fixate on certain movies or some kind of goal. Like, this is how a lot of romance movies come in, because they set up these really unrealistic expectations. And then we start looking at the world like, oh, well, that's joy. Because, you think you're going to get it when you watch a movie, a romance movie, but then you say, oh, well, you compare it to your own life. And like, oh, I don't have that. Instead of having something maybe realistic and very good in life, you're like, well, I don't have that great thing. And then you start kind of changing the score for what it means to have joy in your life. And I can definitely appreciate doing anything that is over the top. It actually makes us deficient in a lot of ways, or we then find the void, right? And so it's like bucket half, or cup half full, cup half empty kind of ideas. And definitely a very powerful hormone like dopamine,
Right.
is part of that.
The big question for this episode is unplugging helpful, or is it just hype? Like, what are your thoughts with how to successfully unplug from certain things and not feel like you have no dopamine left, like how would you um speak to that?
Right. So again, gaining a sense gaining a sense of self, that's a little vague. But the idea of like wanting to be something that isn't there, right? Is really the problem. So if you're going on and you're looking at, oh, all these fashion trends, and then you're like, well, I don't have those in my closet. I don't have the money. I don't have the body. Then you're going to be upset. Then that's toxic. If you're looking at, look at the food channels. I mean, this has been going on for a long time, long before scrolling happened. People would go to the food channels like, oh, if I would only could only make that. I mean, it's the wanting that comes with dopamine and that way to commercialize on it is been there for a very long time. Right. And now it's just we're fed so much more information. And it's okay to learn information, but when it comes to start to be very emotional between what you have and what you don't have, what you are and what you're not.
I've caught myself a few times in certain situations where I'm finding myself going into these like almost like cyclical patterns when it comes to certain things. And I kind of had to go back and reflect on like what my habits really are, to realize if this is a problem or if this is just something I'm doing right now. And a lot of times I feel like I'm very self-aware, so I can kind of see those things, and be critical of myself. But there have been a few times where I was like, okay, maybe this is something I need to adjust, or I'm not feeling very well after doing that for this long or whatever. So I kind of have to kind of navigate differently in the way that I am using my phone or something like that. I mean, we use our phones every day. Mm-hmm. So to just not have a phone anymore isn't really something that is possible for a lot of people. So it's more like limiting yourself in certain areas so that you can go outside and touch the grass, or go outside and, go in your garden, or go and do something that is fulfilling in a different way, that maybe you hadn't done before or hadn't done in a while, just to kind of give yourself new experiences in your life as well.
I would say too, it's an awareness issue for sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're not happy, sometimes it's really hard to admit to yourself. And more than that, if you're not happy, sometimes it's really hard to do something about it, especially when people get into caregiving situations and they're constantly giving, and then they feel like they're not receiving. Mm-hmm. That can be, when people are sandwiched between generations, so they're giving to their kids and they're giving to their parents, and then where are they? And they don't have time to do anything. Right. Or they lose those things about what are they eating, right? What are they doing for movement? They go into bed and they think, oh, I'm finally laying down. Now I have a minute for myself. I want to find joy. So then I'm going to turn on some streaming platform, or, and then just start going, and then the time blows. And then so does their sleep. So then so does their energy level. So it's really a lot of these cyclic efforts, right? Or people, they don't have any time to eat in the day, or they don't make any time. So they get to the end of the day and then they are so tired, thirsty, exhausted, needing a quick fix, and they eat very late. Right. And then they get energy in, and then they get a second wind, and this really does disrupt the adrenals. And they think, okay, well, I shouldn't really go anywhere right now. It's late. I'll just turn on something to keep me awake, or to keep, because now I have this energy. So again, it's that awareness of those patterns, and what are you doing for yourself?
Yeah. I definitely noticed. I've noticed with some of the patients that have come in and things like that. I've had some discussions with them about like different habits that they were talking about. Like, I don't know, I cannot sleep or whatever. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about sleep hygiene a little bit and what you're doing. And a lot of times, like you said, they are they are watching TV and then they just can't go to sleep because they've been watching TV all night or whatever. Um, and so that was definitely something that I was like, okay, well, that's like a really important thing that people need to keep remembering, because it is something that I think, um, it's really easy to do. Like it's really easy for you to, go in and do something like watch TV until midnight or something like that when you've been working all day or you've been doing something all day and you just want a mindless task. But it's also being aware of everything else that you need to make yourself feel better. Um, and so like for me personally, I found, that my phone does things I didn't know that it did, which is funny. But but I
Welcome to the iPhone.
yes, thank you. But I didn't realize like it had all these different modes on it where you can turn off different notifications at certain times of the day, and just keeping myself from scrolling on certain things, that you can have different apps that you can give so much time to, and then it will cut you off, and things like that I thought was like helpful, because again, like of course we use social media at work and we do that too, so like I gave myself enough time to do the work, but then on Saturdays and Sundays I limited that time, things like that, which I thought was actually a really easy, first step for, just recognizing that scrolling does happen, but I have so many other things that I want to do with my life that I don't really want to do that anymore. So, again, I think it's a kind of a way for, you have to kind of reflect on what you need for yourself, and then, take action somehow. I do recommend like journaling a lot of times to people, like just journal about how you're feeling or what's going on, and then maybe from there you can, start to see your patterns, and then you can kind of start to, um, pick a few things that, may make you feel better, and just try to start, um, making those patterns, more cyclical for you.
Yeah, so awareness is, first of all, so here's kind of a rule or a standard or framework. You have your 5 pillars, right? So if you're thinking, what am I eating? And you look at yourself and you say, it's I'm having s'mores for dinner. Okay. Probably that needs to be broccoli, green beans, maybe, how, if you have meat or not, some protein source, right? And then say, okay, maybe I have a little dessert, or I have a dessert in the afternoon, like tea time, that gives me energy. Those are basic parameters. You don't want to violate those. So if you're violating them, you're actually in the long game going to be less happy and less joy. Also, are you moving? We used to have commercials. And when that happened, people would get up and like go get their water or go to the bathroom, or, some people would even commit to like 2 minutes of like, uh, you know, push-ups or, exercises, right? It was kind of this like quick little fix. And then you could go back to laying back on the couch. So you'd have like 10 minutes or 15 minutes of like being like, couch surfer. And then you'd be like, okay, now I'm going to push it. And then you'd lay back on the couch, right? So, that was kind of fun. And then what are your relationships like? Really matters. It's a really important thing to be aware of, because if your relationships are missing, or you're really dedicated to other people, you might be giving all of your joy. And how are you receiving joy for yourself? Right. Then you look at stress. Okay, clearly stress eating, deficient sleeping. I mean, stress is a really important pillar. Okay, so, and then sleep. And sleep is, if you know it's 10 o'clock, you don't need a snack. You don't need to be watching something. You need to be maybe stretching, maybe dimming the lights and kind of cleaning up in the house, maybe journaling, something. But you don't need to be initiating a new activity at 10 o'clock at night. On the weekends it's something, right? But during the week, if it's 10 o'clock, your focus is now the pillar of sleep. And then that's it. That's your rubric. There you go. And then what happens? You sleep well. You make better eating choices. That feeds your body. That builds up. So, you can go into it also mentally, with journaling. And usually sometimes too, though, with that, you can find a lot of caveats because you're seeking joy. So you're like, oh, well, I could do this. And you start building actually a different habit that creates a lot of toxic dopamine, a lot of quick fixes, right? We're designed for that too, by the way. We're designed for quick fixes. And then we're manipulated a little bit with that as well. So really checking in and sometimes not letting it be a mental game, but actually like kind of a rules of life. Like, this is what I know at 10 o'clock I need to be laying down. That's my rule. So, and when you do that, you really start detoxing in a lot of ways. I mean, we talk about dopamine today. It's cool. I love talking about dopamine. I love talking about joy and finding joy. But the only way to kind of find true joy is to get rid of all the stuff that's being fed to us that's kind of fake joy, and make sure that when we're in relationships, when we have stress, that we're processing how we're actually finding joy.
How can our viewers or listeners try to do their own dopamine reset at home? Like, what would you recommend?
Simple, not so simple. I get it. But definitely a very clear, okay, first of all, pick one thing that you're doing. I mean, really be honest with yourself, and also tell someone what you're going to be doing for the next few days. Someone that's close enough that they don't have to nitpick you or hound you. And you don't have to be super specific, particularly if it's something that you're really vulnerable that you're doing. But just generally saying, I'm picking a habit because I really feel like it's actually kind of bringing me down and punishing me. I'm getting like not joy from it, and really it's offsetting me. So tell someone, right? So pick the habit, tell someone, and then figure out how you can replace it. And this is really important because we have so many ways to find true joy, pleasure, happiness in our lives. So maybe you used to paint, and that's why a lot of people got into crayon, a lot of coloring, was they were like, oh, this is simple. I like the texture, right? Shell said, walk in grass. Like, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do this instead. Doesn't mean you have to, if you're scrolling for hours, you might say, I'm just going to, instead of scrolling while I'm eating, I'm going to look at a beautiful picture of a forest, which is forest bathing, for example. So, okay, replacing eating with looking at something, you still want to look at something, but now this forest bathing, even on your phone, is helping you receive joy and process all the pleasure from your activity in that moment. So things like that. And then do it for 72 hours, right? So that's 3 days. Yeah, 3 days. And you can journal about it. You can, put that at front of mind. So when you get into feelings of like, oh, I want to do this, it's like, oh, wait, what do I say to myself instead? And that's what the replacement's about. It's changing your background loop, so you get stuck in that.
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna try to, instead of doing my mindless scrolling, I think I'm gonna try to put that down and pick up my book, because I have a few chapters left in that thing, and I've just been putting it off. But I think that's a much better use of my time.
Yes, definitely. And we have also a lot of dopamine is visual occupation. A lot of the brain is visual occupation. So a book is a really good place to go. Actually looking at a painting in your house, or a photograph, or something that brings you joy, that's another visual occupation that's easy. I mean, imagine if you sat and stared at a painting for like 2 hours, right? I mean, that seems so absurd, but we sit and look at a screen of things that are, that maybe don't even bring us any kind of joy, instead of looking at something beautiful that we really do enjoy. And then if it's not visual occupation, maybe you can go into movement. You don't have to go and kill it at the gym or anything, but if you actually just got on the floor. We were in a meeting yesterday, and I was sitting on the floor with my laptop.
Yep.
And the person was like, a wonderful friend of ours actually, was startled that I was on the floor. And I was like, I'm on the floor all the time. Yoga and Orange Theory now, and my dog's really short, like, 12-pound Shih Tzu. What are you going to do? You're going to be on the floor. Right. And so I didn't think anything of it, but that was it was a remark, right? So it's like, oh, getting on the floor might be something you're not doing, right? But you can get on the floor, move around a little bit, pet your pet, pet your dog, replace that, petting your dog with, or brushing your dog or something. Again, these little tiny examples are not meant to add to your list.
No.
They're actually meant to create awareness and say, I'm going to replace an activity. And then think about the things that are so simple. That's the thing. A lot of this toxic dopamine is so high buzz. If you can get into something that brings you joy that's like a low buzz, that's like a medium buzz, then it's very fulfilling and it's self-renewing. And that's the point of not trying to strip yourself of joy, because probably you're already stripped of joy, and that's why you're going to quick fix joy. And we need to get you out of going to quick fix joy and coming back into meaningful joy, heartfelt joy, purposeful joy.
It's really remarkable, just like sometimes just a simple shift can really make a difference. And so I'm excited to see in the comments if people have done this dopamine reset. Like, tell us how it worked for you, like what happened. We would love to know. And yeah, it's really important that we start kind of shifting to finding joy in a really good way.
Yeah. I think that's just it. I mean, the 72-hour dopamine reset. There it is. How about that for a quick fix? 72 hours, you can do that. Yeah. We probably could have a little handout.
Yep.
Checklist.
We'll have a handout in the description for everybody. Just kind of like your mini checklist of, how to do this reset at home.
And share it, because we know that people need these things, and it's a quick little, hey, this helped me, or if you feel like you're overcommitted to your relationship with your phone, check out this quick little guide, because a little difference can make a big impact.
Right.
Cool. Well, I love talking about dopamine. And with the clinic, we're always talking about it so clinically, medicine and things like that. But I know at the end of the day, it's a lot of what we do in our everyday lives. And then I know how in the extreme I see these massive deficiencies of hormones and hormone depletion. So if you're looking at bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, check out the 72-hour detox reset, because that is basically supporting BHRT.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's cool. All right, well, this was very insightful. We talked about a lot of things regarding, like just this dopamine reset. And I think that it really did answer a lot of questions regarding, like what really is a good way to do that. So I'm excited that we were able to talk about this today. Any last insight before we go?
That you don't need to punish yourself. And if you're really looking for joy, that's okay. You'll find the ways that work for you, that bring peace and joy to your heart. So everything should be about, finding that place of love and appreciation. That's really a hormone reset too. And so that's what I encourage you to do in looking at and what people are saying, and also what you're feeling and what you could be creating for yourself. Feel better, feel great.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing on
Please.
this video. And we will see you in the next one. All right.
All right.